Story 1. During the holidays, my family usually takes turns hosting, and it's a potluck arrangement. We communicate with each other to decide on the menu, location, and time. We also determine who will bring what dish, and everyone contributes. Over the years, we've seen changes in our family dynamics. We bought a house. One of my sisters, we'll call her Alice, went through a divorce, and other family members couldn't host due to space limitations. As a result, the responsibility of hosting often fell on my other sister, we'll call her Carol, and me, because our homes were better suited for large gatherings. This was fine for a while. However, a couple of years ago, things took a turn for the worse. We followed our usual routine, agreeing on the date, time, and menu. But about a week before the event, Carol called to say she couldn't prepare any food because of an important appointment and a lack of time. I understood her situation, as she usually contributed a lot, so I agreed to cover for her, except for the vegetarian entree, which she typically handled, a lentil dish she prepared every year. When the day of the meal arrived, it was chaos. Carol, who claimed to have an appointment, arrived 30 minutes late, announcing that her appointment had been canceled, but she hadn't brought anything to share. She then mentioned that her lateness was due to a conversation with Alice, who claimed she'd be arriving even later. I called Alice, who revealed that her daughter had only just started cooking the potatoes, and she lived an hour away. She's notorious for being late. So, Alice and her daughter arrived 3 hours late with the mashed potatoes, and Alice proceeded to make a salad in my kitchen. One nephew arrived 2 hours late with a bag of store-bought salad greens, while another showed up 3.5 hours late and started cooking vegan burger patties on the stove, but only for himself. One of my brothers, who lived with us, didn't contribute anything either. As a result, I ended up preparing the entire meal myself. We began eating with the few of us who were there at the originally agreed time, realizing that everyone else wouldn't be arriving for hours. The latecomers eventually had some of the food that was brought, but 6 out of the 11 people expected had already eaten. There were no apologies for their extreme lateness or for not bringing anything to contribute, given that Carol's appointment was canceled. The entire ordeal, from house cleaning and preparation to buying food for 12-15 people, even though I had agreed to cover Carol's contributions, meal preparation, and post-dinner cleanup, proved to be too much. I felt taken advantage of, and the day after the gathering, I sent a message expressing that I would never host again. I insisted that they would need to find alternative arrangements for future holidays. The next holiday arrived, and my family called to make plans. They were shocked when I declined to participate in the dinner. Instead, my immediate family and I decided to have our own, far less stressful celebration. During an argument with Alice about my decision, I explained in detail what had happened and why I had chosen to opt out. She seemed to understand and admitted, "We didn't really think much of it, you always do it." Since then, the rest of the family has mostly had holiday dinners in small groups. I still receive inquiries about whether we'll host, but I turn it around and ask them if they are willing to take on the hosting duties. The response is always a resounding no. I simply can't bear the burden any longer. Story 2. This is a story about my grandparents' friend. I was a young teen, but given the outcome, this story has stuck with me. I've sat on this story for a while, but it's so satisfying, so I figured I'd share. For the sake of this story, we will call my grandparents' friend William. Now, my grandparents knew William from way back. My grandmother knew him from school, and my grandfather met him after marrying my grandmother. Anyways, in the 60s, Grandma was a manager at 7-Eleven. William led a crew that went there every day. It was the only gas station in a 30-minute radius, so everyone knew everyone in that sleepy coastal town kind of way. Now, one day William was doing a job down on the waterfront and slipped, fell, and broke his back. While he was healing from the operation and was broke as a joke, my grandma would always make sure to send him something to eat that she'd pay for when the crew would come in to grab their snacks and gas up. Knowing William would simply skip the meal to save the money for his own family. My grandpa also took him to several doctor appointments since William couldn't drive for a while and his tiny little wife couldn't wrangle him into a car by herself. William never forgot that. 20 years later, when he sold off his now very successful business and was a millionaire about 20 times over, he promptly told 90% of the world to go to hell, but kept those that had always been there for him close. Meanwhile, he never moved from the house that he'd had since before he was rich. His only concessions to his wealth were trips with his wife to see the world and buying up quite a few acres of the forested land around him. If you weren't his friend, you'd take him for every other blue-collar worker in the town. There was absolutely nothing obvious to show that he was worth tens of millions of dollars. After his wife died in the 90s, William decided to take up a new hobby. As he lived outside of the city limits, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop, got all the proper permits and everything. The saws were in a big old enclosed building in the middle of all that land, so in all honesty, so no harm, no foul, right? Wrong. The family that owned the forest behind William's land had just sold it to developers. Thus, the new luxury gated neighborhood, the first in the area, was born. Enter a plethora of Chads and Karens who were mostly from up north and had moved down south to take advantage of the better weather and the nearby beach. It didn't take long before they decided to take offense to his little business venture on the other side of the 10-foot-tall wall of their neighborhood because it didn't fit with the image of their community. You know, the community he was decidedly not a part of. So, they sued him. Didn't even try to start a dialogue with him, just up and sued him. William was livid. He was your typical coastal redneck, and he would be damned if those Yankees told him what to do on his own property that was not within city limits nor located in Anhoa. William countered with professional noise studies that showed that some of the kids in that neighborhood drove vehicles that made more ambient noise than his little operation. Nope, the people in the neighborhood simply threw more money at the lawyers to continue on with the lawsuit. Essentially, their plan was to bleed him dry. Their lawyers, who were not locals, actually told William's lawyer that he should probably advise his client to close the shop so that he wouldn't end up bankrupt due to the resources being thrown at him from the homeowners. Due to the relatively modest surroundings of his home, the neighbors nor their lawyers had any idea the man was actually richer than just about all of them put together. All they saw was an older dude who drove a beat-up 80s model truck and wore Dickies jeans and work shirts that lived in what appeared to be a relatively modest home, especially compared to their McMansions. When William's lawyer told him about that conversation, William lost his mind. I clearly remember him screeching into my parents' driveway in that old work truck, cussing up a storm and ranting and raving before he even got in the house. He came to our house. Why? Because my grandmother, bless her heart, was known as one of the most giving people in the world. Unless you got her angry. If you hurt her or someone she cared for, she became one of the most vindictive people that could be found in that town. I am not kidding when I say that her ability for revenge served cold was legendary amongst the locals. So William had come to the house for a dose of her deviousness. Us kids weren't allowed inside during that conversation, but after he left that day, I later heard the adults talking about how he proceeded to hire quite a few private investigators to see if there would be any dirt to dig up on them. By them, I mean the dozens of people in that neighborhood that were a part of that lawsuit. Lo and behold, there were apparently copious amounts of dirt to be had. I still remember him positively crowing about it to my grandparents one fine summer day months later. That 60-something-year-old man was as gleeful as the proverbial kid on Christmas morning. Why? Because after he learned what his little private army dug up, he started making some phone calls to various acquaintances in high places. The ensuing fallout meant that the lawsuit was dropped. There was quite a list of misdeeds that were discovered, but the ones that I heard talked about by the adults that stick out are: there were more than a handful of individuals that owed back child support. William very helpfully had the private investigators provide the mother's updated address and employment information so that they could pursue said child support garnishment if they wanted to. On top of that, the IRS became very interested in several of those people, as well as various other neighbors. Finally, one household ended up in prison because the investigators realized that they were drug dealers. The pictures of the transactions caught by the pies were helpfully handed over to the sheriff's department. Drugs are bad, kids. Moral of the story: never get a rich redneck angry. Story 3. I work for a Spanish company. It's been like 7-8 years, and we know each other pretty well. I've known and worked with the CTO for like 10 years now. He's a cool guy that wants stuff done. Even before 2020, the WFH work from home policy was extremely relaxed. You do you and have things done by the time we need it. We're okay. So when the pandemic came, the transition was as easy as it could get. In fact, as a company, and especially on the tech team, we embraced the opportunity and started hiring people from outside the city for a cheaper salary than in the city, but for the people, a higher salary than the one they could get without moving into the city. I even moved out of the city during that time. Since CTO didn't want to be a sales guy, the company hired a CEO in 2021, an Englishman that came highly recommended and was stationed in his rural house in the English countryside. Looked like a cool, relaxed guy for a while. Once the pandemic ended, he started pushing rather heavily for a return to office RTO for everyone. He made polls, lengthy emails to everyone about how this fostered relationships and whatnot. He got really pushy, even complaining to CTO about it. So every time he came to Spain, people that lived around the city would go to the office just to be there, so CEO was happy. And then, one time, CTO decided that he had enough about the whole RTO mandate and CEO complaining. So, on a random meeting of the tech team, CTO said, "Okay, next Tuesday, I want everyone on the office. If you live far away, book a train, drive, whatever you have to do. I'll pay, but be here." And so we did. That Tuesday, every single one of the tech team, including people that took a 2 or 3 hour trip to get there, was in the office. Guess who wasn't there? Yeah, the CEO. So, CTO took a picture, emailed it to CEO saying something along the lines of, "If you can't lead by example, don't push my people to do things that don't work." And we went to have a relaxing lunch and beers type of day. Aftermath. RTO mandate never came to fruition. CEO was out of the company a year later. We closed the office since everyone works 100% of the time from home. And, to his dismay, CTO is now CTO and acting CEO, and things are going smoothly. Story 4. My aunt and her 3 children came from Texas to visit us for the weekend. I wasn't thrilled about their arrival because her oldest son, who is 19 now, used to pick on me when we were younger. It had been a decade since she last visited us. As they entered our house, my aunt walked in with her oldest son, a younger son who is 12, and a younger daughter who is 8. I put on a forced smile and greeted them. I told the 2 youngest ones that they could go upstairs and play on my Xbox until dinner time. Then, I joined my twin brother and mom, sitting down beside them. I'm passionate about video editing and Photoshop, so Final Cut Pro X is my preferred software. A few months ago, I upgraded to a 15-inch MacBook Pro because my 2013 Mac was no longer sufficient for my needs. While everyone was engaged in conversation, and my brother and I were using our phones as instructed by our mom to be present with the family, my aunt ventured upstairs to explore the house. Curiosity got the better of me, and I followed her, offering to show her around. When she entered my room, she noticed my MacBook and inquired about its owner. Here's how the conversation unfolded. Entitled Aunt, "Krusty, whose laptop is that?" Me, "Oh, that's mine." Entitled Aunt, "Can I hold it?" Me, Sure." E takes hold of it. "Wow, Krusty, this feels nice. Can I keep it?" Me, Absolutely not." Entitled Aunt, "I'll pay you for it. It's probably worth around $500, right?" Me, "Actually, this is a $5,000 laptop. I worked hard to save up for it. I can't just give it away." Entitled Aunt, "Krusty, I deserve it. I haven't seen you guys in 10 years, and you didn't even get me a gift?" Me, "Is that my fault? I don't think so." Entitled Aunt, "Well, since you won't give it to me, you shouldn't be allowed to use it either." To my shock, She proceeded to open the laptop and forcefully throw it onto the ground, then deliberately stepped on it with her high heels. If we had carpeted floors, the laptop might have been salvageable, but unfortunately, we didn't, and her actions sealed its fate. I immediately called my parents, who rushed to my aid. My mom asked why she did such a thing, to which she mumbled, "Because she wouldn't give it to me." As a consequence, my aunt and all her children were banned from our house. I turn 18 in less than a week, so I'll wait until I'm officially an adult to take legal action and sue her for the damages. Wish me luck. Edit. I intend to file a police report and, hopefully, pursue legal action. Clearly, she's struggling to take responsibility for her actions. Edit 2. A few months ago, I pressed charges and took her to court, and fortunately, I won the case. Now, she owes me a significant amount of money. Story 5. So the title is self-explanatory, but you will be surprised. When I F28 was in elementary school, I had a bully. I'll call her Aya because it's the only nice thing I will ever do for her. It all started in the first grade. She was the instant popular girl because she talked about her time in Ghana. She was born and raised there up until she was 4 years old when her parents immigrated to America. And I thought that was so cool because the only immigrants I have ever known were from Mexico. I'm also Mexican, which is something you need to remember because we lived in Texas. I asked her what was life like in Africa. She looked at me and said in a very smug voice, "A lot better than Mexico." I thought that was weird, but I let it go because we were kids at the time, and I think she just wanted to be cool or something. As the year went on, she always made off-handed comments about me being Mexican, and it was always directed towards me. It wasn't until the second grade when we were just learning this brand new word that we have never heard of before, racism. 7-year-old me at the time vaguely understood it because my mom taught me the words that was derogatory towards us and wanted me to be aware of them. Anyway, we were watching a cartoon about Martin Luther King Jr., and we were at a scene where the protesters were being unjustly arrested. I thought it was cruel and didn't think it was fair. Aya, though, looked at me and shouted, "A beaner like you would never understand." For those who don't know, the word beaner is a slur against Latin people. Sure, it's not as disgusting as the N-word, but it is a disgusting word to people like me, and I've been called that a lot of times even back then. I was horrified being called that in the middle of class, and I looked at my teacher who just shrugged her shoulders and went back to the show. I couldn't believe it. We're learning about the civil rights movement, and I was called a racial slur in front of everyone. I tried asking my teacher why didn't she say anything because what called me was a bad word towards me and my ethnicity. All she did was say, "It's just a word, just bored citizen, sticks and stones." I ran home in tears and told my mom everything. She was upset at first, but at the time she told me that Aya probably didn't know that that word was a bad word towards Latin people, and maybe she'll figure it out when she's older or say sorry the next day. How wrong my mother was. For the next 4 years, Aya would throw racial slurs at me, calling me a beaner who eats nothing but beans or a wetback because I must have crossed the Rio Grande River. I begged her every single time to stop, and I went to my teachers pleading with them for help, but they never did anything. It wasn't just the racial slurs she threw at me. She would insult me for the way I looked, the way my hair was, why I was bigger compared to the other girls who were slim. She wasn't a model herself either. Things got worse in the 4th grade. I was going through a rough time because my mom was dating a man who drank beer as if prohibition ended. He also smoked heavily, and the smell will end up on my clothes, which added fuel for Aya's fire. It was when dare was a big thing back in the day. I would always use me as an example about the dangers of smoking, pointing out how the smell was so bad that she constantly plugged her nose every time she walked by me. It led to rumors of me never taking a bath that followed me up until the end of 6th grade. At this time my mom was starting to realize that Aya was not stopping, and she tried contacting the school, but all she would get was that it was just a disagreement between 2 classmates. She wrote notes for me to give to my teachers, but nothing would happen, and in the 5th grade things really took a bad toll. My grandfather passed away, and his death hurt me so much that even to this day I still feel that raw pain of his passing. Word got out to my school, and Aya walked up to me saying how sorry she was that my grandfather was gone. I naively thought that maybe, just maybe, she would stop being a bully and say sorry for saying racist things towards me. Nope. It's sad that he died to get away from you. I would too if I realized my granddaughter was so ugly. I broke into tears while she and a few of her friends laughed, and as always, none of my teachers did anything to stop her. I told my mom, who managed to finally get a hold of my teacher and demanded that she do something about it, or else she was going to go up there and make her stop. So for the first time in the whole year, my teacher walked up to Aya and told her to stop being so mean to me. I looked at her and burst into tears, crying that she was being so mean. It's because I'm black, isn't it? Immediately my stupid teacher backed off. Aya would go on to use that phrase every single time any of our teachers even attempted to do something. Now you're probably wondering, how did she ruin my life? Well, I'm getting to it. Things slowly quieted down when I was in 6th grade, but I was plotting something. I used to draw anime a lot. I wasn't any good, but I practiced every single day and slowly my skills were improving. I was drawing the main cast of Sailor Moon during free period, and it was a decent first attempt, really. For once there were no stray pencil marks and I didn't have to erase as much. I left to go to the bathroom, and when I came back my drawing was ruined. It had pen marks everywhere with the words Beaner and Wetback in permanent marker all over it. I was devastated and broke down. I worked so hard on that drawing, and it was vandalized with hate. I looked over to a group of desks where Aya was sitting, and I saw her laughing. She and a couple of her girlfriends were saying how funny it was I was crying over a stupid picture, and I saw that she had that stupid permanent marker in her desk. I marched up to her and yelled at her. I demand to know, what is it about me she hated so much? Why was she acting like a racist towards me when I did nothing to her? I was crying, I was screaming, and my teacher told both of us to go to the office. I thought we were finally going to solve the issue, but as always I was wrong. My principal looked at the both of us and said that I should apologize to Aya. Me, what? P. Apologize to her for yelling at her. Just because you're upset over drawing doesn't mean you have to yell at a classmate for it. Me, but she ruined my drawing. She wrote slurs all over it. I should point out that she even had permanent marker stains on her hands. Me, why aren't you telling her that you don't tolerate racism in this school? Why are you always taking her side? P. I'm not taking sides, young lady, but those are just words. Sticks and stones. I honestly didn't know what to feel at that moment. I realized that Aya was getting away with her racism, and there was nothing I could do about it. I still refused to apologize, and the principal called my mom, who demanded that the principal do something about Aya, but nothing happened as always. After that incident, Aya was emboldened at the fact that she could get away with the bullying and made my life hell. She destroyed me. It was to the point where I could no longer draw again. Even to this day, if I even try to draw a character I liked, I would break into tears and just stop. My mom tried everything. She pleaded, she demanded, and she threatened, but my school just brushed it off as an overprotective single mom who just didn't like seeing her overly sensitive child hurt. In my mom's perspective, from what she told me, she watched as her happy-go-lucky little girl slowly morphed into a sad and combative teenager. I developed a hatred towards my own ethnicity, and I cried that I wished I was white because I hated being called those words, and I hated the way my face looked because I could see my Native American features. That's right, I'm indigenous too. She made me hate myself. It was only after elementary school did the bullying finally stop, because she went to a different junior high school, but just because I was able to get away from her didn't mean that the effects of her bullying stopped. I had to go to therapy to get rid the terrible things she said to me out of my head and slowly regain myself as a person. My family, who knew of the bullying, gathered around and gave me unconditional love and support, all the while telling me stories of our ancestors who started our family, how they fled Spain during the Texas Revolution. I even went to the tribe I was descended from to help gain a better understanding of my indigenous roots, and they helped me immensely as well. Aya and I ended up going to the same high school, but I avoided her like the plague because I wanted nothing to do with her or her bullshit. Aya was a model student, and during Black History Month, we used to have an assembly where we talked about the great black figures in history. She would always go on the podium and talk about how proud she was of her race, and that we should embrace everyone of different race, religion, and all that good stuff. It took all of my willpower and constant reminding of myself that what happened in elementary school was in the past to not laugh and roll my eyes. I just thought she was a piece of work. Fast forward to 2021. I was packing up my room because I was getting ready to move some of my stuff to my new house with my then fiancé husband while we were planning our wedding. I was reading a book on my phone when I got a notification from someone I hadn't seen since high school. It was Aya. I'm an adult now, so instead of feeling the terrible anxiety I would always feel whenever I would get a note from her, I just looked at it annoyed and wondered what the hell did she want, and opened it. Apparently she was hosting our elementary school reunion because the old building was being torn down in place of a new one. She was inviting everyone who went to school there, so we can say goodbye to the old girl. Honestly, I didn't want to go because that school has done nothing but bring me grief and anger. Just driving by it over the years would make my heart pound uncomfortably. I wanted to decline, but I thought to myself, that stupid school will be destroyed. Why not spit on it or something? And then something sparked in my head. This could be my last chance to expose Aya for what she really was. A no-good racist who takes joy in other people's misery. And it wasn't just me she threw racial slurs at. She was like that to everyone. From the girl who was from Delhi to a Chinese student who ended up transferring to a different school because he couldn't take it anymore. The planning? Having dinner with my mom, I asked her if she remembered the girl who used to bully me. She gripped her fork and said that she did remember and how much she hated that little bitch. I asked her if she remembered going to the school many times to complain about her, and she said yes, and that she had written down everything that was said. And knowing my mom, she never threw anything away because it was important documents. I decided to look into her old files, and I found them. It was not only the notes Mom took, but it was also full of the hateful messages Ada wrote to me, even my Sailor Moon drawing that had those terrible racial slurs on it. The terrible feeling of self-hatred and sorrow came back in full. I was close to tears seeing that drawing and those notes. I really wanted to know why she had so much hate in her heart. After calming myself down, I went to work. I printed copies of the notes along with a note from my principal, which said it seems that Aya called just aborts in nasty words based on her ethnicity. It was even signed by that principal, which proved two things. Was a racist and the school knew, but refused to do anything. The revenge. The little party was basically a barbecue on the school playground. I showed up in casual clothing and saw my old classmates for the first time in years. To say the least, I was the only one who still looked fresh-faced and not worn down by parenthood. I did catch up to a few of them. Most of them were actually Aya's victims, but unlike me, they ignored her when she would bully them. Looking around, I actually saw some known members of our local equal rights group. I assumed she invited them because Aya made a name for herself over the years since graduation. It almost made me feel sorry for what I was going to do. And when I mean almost, I mean never. The little barbecue went by smoothly, and Aya was talking about the beautiful memories she had at our old school, and that she was so thankful that they welcomed her with open arms because she was an immigrant from a faraway country and was worried of not being able to belong. I remembered how proud she was when she first walked in our class, no fear at all. After her passionate farewell speech, everyone in our class took turns saying their own farewells. They half-assed their speeches, and some just said that the school was awesome. When it was my turn, I looked around and saw everyone staring at me. Aya is standing there with a confident smile on her face, as if she thought that I was so beaten down that I would just say whatever with the school and that's it. But nope. Over the years since graduation, I sort of developed a I don't give a fuck attitude. I say what I say, and I will do a microphone drop if I have to. I talked about how I was so nervous going to the school because it was something new, and I knew that it would lead me to a path of adulthood. I talked about how this damn school had brought nothing but nightmares, horrible teachers, and a terrible student who bullied me so much that my poor mother had to spend thousands of dollars of her life savings just to give me therapy because I could not function well. I then looked at Aya and said that she was a prime example of the American dream. An immigrant who worked tirelessly to make it in this complicated country. I then said in the same smug tone of voice she had 20 years ago, "I am so glad you grew out of your racism." And with that I stood up and left. And remember what I said about those notes my mom kept? Well, I sent them to that local group anonymously and told them that their star volunteer was not who she was. I just thought that would be the end of it, but I did not know of the absolute shitstorm I caused. Aya's reputation destroyed. When the leader of the group saw the notes, he was livid. He immediately told her that she was no longer welcomed and said that she was a terrible example for the people they were helping. Her fiancé dumped her, she lost her job, and as it turns out, her parents never knew of the bullying. I guess my principal decided that it wasn't worth calling them years ago. They were angry with her and demanded to know where did she get this attitude because from when I found out her father works in a business that required them to travel to and from Ghana, and he worked with many interesting people. On top of that, my former principal apparently lost a special award she got for her contributions to our school district when the superintendent happened to get an envelope containing my mother's notes, and he was just as livid. I got an apology from the school district along with other victims of Aya. They accepted that just to get it over with, but I politely refused, saying that it was too little too late. I did get comments from my former classmates saying that I should have just let it all go, but here's the thing, I did get over it. I wanted nothing more than to just close that chapter in my life and move on, but seeing her name in that email really triggered something in me, and knowing that she was running around saying things which was opposite of what she really believed. I wanted her to feel broken the same way as I felt. My mom was neutral about it. I don't resent her because she did everything she possibly could to stop the bullying. I'm thankful for that because in some stories I've seen on Reddit about people being bullied, their parents do absolutely nothing. I'm in a much better place now. I moved out of state after I got married and I'm happy. Aya has attempted to contact me demanding I apologize for ruining her life, but I just ignored her and blocked her. I wish I knew why she had so much hatred. I was never rude to her. I thought she was cool that she was from Africa. I love their culture, and I thought it was awesome that she was a part of it. I also wish I could draw again because it was my only escape from a troubled life I had aside from the bullying. I'm just glad I was able to regain love for who I am as a person of Mexican descent and of indigenous background, because she really made me feel like I was worthless for it. That's the story of how I ruined the life of my racist bully. With the plot twist was that she was black and I was Mexican. Sure, the words she said were probably just words, but those words were very derogatory to me and many people of my ethnicity, and it's just as degrading as being called an N-word to a black person. And it also shows that even black people can be the worst racists. I'm not saying that all black people are racist because I've met amazing black people in my lifetime who truly believe in racial equality. I wanted to keep this to myself, but after seeing the terrible attacks on Asian Americans since the stupid pandemic happened, I noticed that it was sparking a big debate on who should be charged with hate crime. We're still not there yet when it comes to truly being equal regardless of race, gender, religion, and orientation, but little by little we are becoming a little bit better. Not much, but a little bit. Sorry for the long post. I just want to get this off my chest, and please don't make the comments into a debate. I'm really not trying to start anything, I just wanted to tell how I finally got my revenge. Edit. Okay, I really meant it when I said I wasn't trying to start anything when I posted this. But because some people are doubting Thiswitch, I'm not surprised. Let me clarify a couple of things for you. Why did I still have those notes? Because the bullying happened before social media became a big thing. It was the early 2000s. She saved those notes because I think she was planning on going to the district. But by the time she was able to even consider it, elementary school ended and Aya went to a different junior high. Where does she learn those words? When she first called me Beaner, she noticed my reaction. Bullies will tell you anything just to get a reaction out of you. The strongest reaction, the better. I even told her not to call me that word because it was a slur, but that didn't stop her. And why did it cause that district to apologize? Because it wouldn't be the first time they were accused of covering up bullying based on race. They were already going through a lawsuit over a recent incident similar to mine, and they just wanted to avoid any legal repercussions. But as I said, I don't care about that school anymore. It can go to hell for all I care.